All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to the Chrysalis. We're back for episode 3 where we will be discussing art for healing's sake as opposed to art for art's sake, if you're familiar. The lovely Daria M. Sullivan is here with me today. Would you like to say hello?
Hi, everyone.
So welcome back, Miss Daria M. Sullivan. So today is kind of just going to be a stream of thought kind of thing, guys. And ladies and non-binary folks. So recently I had the opportunity to revisit a piece of theater that I worked on. I think it's 2 or 3, it's got to be 3 years now, 3 years ago at the University of Pittsburgh. I won't name it just because it's still in the works. But basically it's a piece that tackles gun violence and the ubiquitous nature of guns in America. And what that means and how to create a show that is hopefully for a greater purpose of getting some kind of better gun control, but also at the same time not alienating its audience, which is really hard to do. And revisiting that script just kind of made me think about, it reminded me why I do art, because when we started this script, we were all just kind of in a devising class, just sitting in a circle. We had this idea that we were passionate about, but we didn't really know where we were going to go with it or how it was going to look in the end. We just kind of took what we had and worked from the ground up. And for those who aren't familiar, devising is a technique. Feel free to look it up. It's founded by Anne Bogart. She studied at Columbia for years. But basically devising is, you're starting from the ground up with nothing. You can take a piece of text, an image, a thought, a word, and use it to kind of propel an ensemble into, 1, connecting through movement work, and 2, creating a piece from the ground up. And that's just a very elementary explanation of devising. Like, there's so many facets to it that I can't even, begin to dive into. And maybe we'll have time to dive into. But, yeah, I originally, when I first came into contact with devising, that kind of gave me confidence as a creator, not just an artist who regurgitated other people's work for them. I was like, okay, cool, I can make something too because it's this easy. Like, that's how devising felt for me. It felt so natural and so easy. And it just kind of made me think, okay, well, if I'm tired of the same thing that I'm seeing on stage, and now I have this tool in my back pocket where I know that I can make work by myself with just a word or just a thought, then maybe it's not so hard to create art that has a purpose or art that feeds me, you know? So yeah, that kind of led me to thinking about creating a theater company, which who knows, we'll see in the future if that comes to fruition. Who knows, maybe my ideas will change. But originally, that kind of made me think, okay, well, what if I started a theater company that just created socio-politically charged works and addressed very head-on the issues that we're facing today and kind of gave the audience a moment to sit and think about it. Kind of inspiration from Augusto Boal's Theater of Conflict. And literally his plays involved the audience kind of this judge and jury type situation of, okay, here's the situation in the play, guys. Now what are we going to do? What's the most moral, ethical thing to do? Moral, ethical, practical thing to do. And I really liked that idea of using a play to teach. I mean, I think it's a simple one, but there's a lot of art for art's sake, and I personally prefer art for healing's sake. Did you want to expand on that a little, Daria? Your experience or where you became introduced to this idea of creating art, not just because it's pretty, but because it can help people?
Yeah, I guess for me, looking back on what I was creating when I was younger, I came into performing at a young age, and looking back at what we were making, I definitely feel like it was this pretty thing that was and now we're on, and this is the audience, presentational situation, and that was definitely okay, we are putting on a show for the audience to enjoy, and it's this product in a way. But then when I delve a little deeper, I was a part of this this like program, I guess you can call it, called Traveling Troupe, and it was for like 4th and 5th graders, and our director would kind of devise a piece and like pull from different shows, like and one time we had a prompt where it was like, write down a response to something, like why you like theater or something, and those would be like lines in the show to kind of like make it cohesive, like the numbers cohesive. And we did that, and then we would go on to show it to different schools, and then show it to like senior citizens' homes.
Oh, I love
and
that.
So yeah, like in that way, that was healing. And in some ways, like as a baby performer, that was me just like understanding, like it was such a good exercise of like going from devising a piece in one space and then going on and having to put it into another space.
Right.
And it being like, I don't know what this space looks like, and we just have to figure it out, you know?
Yeah.
So I guess like for me, like the root of where I come from is like, yes, this presentational like show, and this is showbiz, little kids, but also like this is healing. So I guess like in a subtle way, I've always had that quality to my art without even realizing it, like whether it's healing myself and giving a space for me to express myself, but also like helping others.
That's beautiful. And personally, I know a lot of people who can speak to this, of just the feeling that you need to make art and there's really no other choice. Like not making art is almost like having a board sitting on your chest. Like it's that restrictive almost, because it's something that literally is a coping mechanism for you throughout the day. It's part of, for me, the majority of the therapy that I got through performance was through the actual training itself. Like doing Linklater training, Kristen Linklater voice and movement training, doing that at Point Park, and just doing this crazy hippy dippy shit in a room. Like literally everything you think an actor is doing in a room, that's what we were doing. Like everything that strangers imagine, like the weird sounds, the weird motions and gestures, rolling on the floor, juggling balls, like that type of stuff. Like that's what we were doing in that room. But through that, we were reading texts titled things like Freeing the Natural Voice, how to, you know, remove yourself of these inhibitors that society has put on you. And a lot of them manifest vocally. And I didn't ever think about that. Like some people who are more insecure tend to speak lower, or people who have been silenced as kids tend to speak less, just little things like that. And it doesn't always apply that simply, but looking at it, I was like, wow, this is me, like middle child syndrome, all of that stuff. Very, very telling. And so just kind of reading that and finding that connection that seems so obvious, but just isn't, it kind of spoke to me. And I started to pay a little bit more attention in class and actually think about, okay, well, what is hindering me? What do I feel is holding me back? And I know something that has always made me self-conscious about the way I speak is just the tone of my voice, because I've had a very rich voice since middle school, and people used to always make fun of me and tell me I sounded like a dude. And I, for a while, like tried to make my voice sound higher, because I'm like, this is what all the girls sound like, so let's just make it squeakier, apparently. So struggling through that and like coming to the realization that there's nothing wrong with my voice and it actually is really beautiful. And there's nothing wrong with the way it sounds, and kind of working through that, working through traumas without having to speak them out loud. Like just things like when your voice teacher is having you lie down on the floor and close your eyes and imagine that your pain is felt as a color, or, you know, a feeling is felt as a color, and every feeling drops into this pool in your solar plexus. Like it's all just so visual and metaphorical. And honestly, it feels like it's just meditative in the best way, I feel like. And that's probably what really finally like pulled me in. And I was like, okay, maybe I can teach this stuff to people someday, you know, maybe, and I still plan on doing that, teaching people the training that goes into acting. Obviously, I want to teach people how to put on their own shows too, but I just want to train, like, show people, look, this training should be done for everyone, whether you're an acting major or not, because my God, there's so many humans out here walking around with trauma that they don't even know exists.
It's like teach acting. I feel like learning how to act is like learning how to live in a healthy way.
Literally, like, that's exactly what it is.
And learning about yourself. That's what that's reminding me of like learning about your voice and how, which is partially how you navigate through the world.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I feel like art has done for me. It helps me gain this self-awareness that I didn't have before.
Same.
Of just like, oh, that's how people see me. That's informative. Like, I didn't realize that, because we'll never truly see ourselves through other people's eyes.
Yeah.
But just getting even a glimpse of that,
it's helpful.
through acting, yeah, it's super informative, and can also like help you with negotiations, anything you have to do professionally.
Yeah.
Just having that knowledge of, oh, this is what people are saying when I walk into a space. Got it. This is what I'm fighting against. This is what is already presumed about me. That's untrue. How can I like switch around that?
Yeah. And really quickly, you all, I just want to share an anecdote from one of our listeners. Kaya Freights, at Kaya Freights, KHAYAFRAITES. Please follow her. She got poetry, y'all. She got a poetry Instagram, Blue Umbrella Poems. Okay,
Ooh,
Blue
I like that.
Umbrella Poems. But I just wanted to share a quick anecdote about her experience with theater as therapy. So we're gonna quote her directly. And she says, I have to say, I, in all caps, y'all, definitely feel like I make art because I have to. I started theater in high school because I was going through a rough time at home, and it allowed me to be someone else and just escape my own thoughts. I fell in love with it and never stopped. I also use writing poetry as a way to get out how I'm feeling, and I ended up having so many poems over the past several years that I took them all and published a book through Amazon. Yes.
Wow.
So look for her book, y'all. I don't have the title of the book here, but
Maybe we'll have a next episode.
yeah, or I'll tag it for you all on my on the Chrysalis Facebook page, so please follow. I think it definitely helped me to create a physical thing to put my feelings into a creative medium. I also think that this has helped me deal with my feelings in a constructive way as opposed to keeping everything in. All right. Thank you so much for the anecdote. I really appreciate it. And I definitely feel that using art as a way to stop time, like stop the time that you're living in and live in somewhere else. Like, I definitely have felt that. There was a lot of arguing in my house growing up, and to this day, arguing makes like it triggers my anxiety really badly. Like, whenever I know an argument is coming or whenever I hear loud talking, I start to shake. And honestly, like, part of getting through that was being in shows and not being at home. Like, things like that, just little stuff like that really helped me. And I feel like, especially in today's world where there's less and less funding for the arts, we need it more now, like, than we've ever needed it, if you ask me, because there's just so much disconnect with who we are. And we've talked about this in our past episodes. Like, people don't know who they are. And I feel like harnessing your artistic ability is just becoming more human. I don't know.
There's something so special about when you sing and you sing with other people and you harmonize and hearing a beautiful sound and knowing I'm a part of the making of that sound. Like, I'm helping to raise this song up.
Yeah. That
I feel like is so healing, like, as a part of art. And I remember, like, in the post, this listener referenced high school. And I remember when I was in high school, I lost my grandfather. And that was so hard. That was so hard. And that was my first loss.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know how to deal with it. Like, I think there's something about losing someone for the first time that shakes your core as a human.
Yeah.
Because intellectually, people don't live for forever. We all know that. Like, eventually people will die, and that your grandparents are closer to that, getting to that point, for sure. It's what it is.
Yeah.
But when it actually happens, it's like, oh my God. And I just remember feeling so low and having a choir class and just like being in that choir. And sometimes I just felt so horrible. Like, I came from having a conversation with one of my family members when they broke the news to me that my grandfather was on the decline. And I just was like, because I'm the type of person where I definitely deal with my feelings out loud.
Yeah.
Like, I'm very much like, I am not okay. And I expect other people to like express it in the same way I do, which just isn't true or real. And I went back to choir class, and that was just like everything to me, to even sing the simplest of songs and just be like, we are creating something, and in this moment I am escaping what is, or I feel validated.
Yeah.
I feel validating in saying like, he's able,
Amen. And just quickly, I want to acknowledge art for art's sake is a privilege. Like, it's a privilege to be able to just make art and not have to think about the political and social weight of it, because it all carries weight in one way or another. And I just feel like myself as a Black woman, with the political climate of this country, me just making stories that don't have a greater purpose in my eyes, and that's not to judge anyone else. To me, it's not responsible, or it's just not what I want to be doing. At the heart of it, just not what I want to be doing. I don't want to do something if it's not helping. Like, if it's just there, if it's not serving a greater purpose, then I don't, like, personally, that's just not what I want to do. That's not the kind of art that I want to put into the world, because I feel like we need every story that's being put out there to mean something, because every one of us, if you've seen a show that has moved you, but if you've seen a show and you're an artist in particular, like, every one of us has that one moment in a show where you're reminded of, like, you know what? The world is full of love, and it can be okay if we just organize. Like, it can be okay. Like, if we really just put that energy into this kind of reality, it can be okay. And it really can, but that second some people leave the theater, it's just gone. Like, it's over their heads. It rushes over them for a minute, and then it's like, it'll be dinner conversation, car conversation, maybe, and then it's over. And it's like, how do we get that feeling to stay, like, to stick? Truly, like, I don't know. I really don't know how we get that feeling to stick. And I think that's part of the journey for myself as a writer, is figuring out how to create pieces that get that journey to stick and get people to carry it out of the actual theater with them. And this piece that we worked on that I mentioned in the beginning of this episode is really one of those pieces that stuck with a lot of the audience after the fact, and very much hearing back from people saying, oh, well, yeah, we had a conversation that we've never had before, or this really gave me a new perspective. And even myself, it gave me a new perspective on people who use guns for livelihood, because that's not a reality that I live. I live in the city. Food is at the grocery store, and that's just where food is. But for some people, food is what they find and what they catch and what they grow, and that's it. There's no grocery store close by. So it just kind of reminded me that there really are people who are out here living off these guns for livelihood. Not everybody's just toting because they want to. They tote because they have to, and just things like that. And quickly, for those who are intrigued, if you want to learn more about devising, you can purchase the Viewpoints book, Anne Bogart and Tina Landau, A Practical Guide to Viewpoints and Composition. And it's got Viewpoints 101 from beginning to end, like everything pretty much you could want to know. And it talks about like the viewpoints of time and space, time, tempo, duration, kinesthetic response, how your body responds to another person, repetition, so you're playing with time, a lot of it. And the viewpoints of space would be shape, so making like different shapes with your body, gesture. You can have behavioral gestures, or expressive gestures. Behavioral, you're doing a literal daily thing. Like maybe your gesture is that you're brushing your teeth. And a more expressive gesture is like, oh, I just want to swing my arms to the ground and lift my body back up. But it has to have a clear beginning, middle, and end. And then we've got some architecture. You can play with what's in the room. You've got spatial relationship, your distance from things on stage from one another, topography, and composition. There's just so much to it. So I really highly recommend y'all reading that. And it's a nice read. You can jump from chapter to chapter. It's not something that requires chronological order, right, if you don't like that, because I know some people don't. And I think that something that we talked about, Daria, that I want to touch on is the beauty of the process more than anything is creating a show when you're sitting in rehearsals and working through feelings and working through the script and working through your day. I feel like that's another emphasis on the part of the beauty that comes from making art is the actual process itself and the growth that comes from the process of forming those intimate relationships in such a short amount of time, the growth that comes from forming a partnership on stage, like feeling like somebody's got you and that's that, like no matter what happens on that stage, they got you, like you have a friend, you have an ally on that stage. Did you want to expand on that at all?
I think when you go out into the world and you have to get a job because capitalism, something that I think is missing, because I was like sitting at my old job wondering like what exactly is missing right now. I know that something is. I can't exactly pinpoint. And what am I aching for in the art world that I'm not getting here? Yeah. And I guess part of it is process, that it's so much about product when you're at a job, and like not every single job, but a lot of them, I would go and take the leap to say most of jobs in capitalism, again, is about the product. So it's not about your process during that, because anything that you're dealing with, you need to take care of that outside of here. And when you're here, you need to be working. Yeah. And you need to be working towards the product that we're getting at, because that's our moneymaker, and time is money. Yeah. But when you're in theater and you're training, and even if you're working on a show and like, okay, the product is the show, it's still about the process, especially if you're doing the right type of thing. And I'm using quotation marks, people, because like it could be something that's, we're just going to put on a musical and make a lot of money for rich white folk. Like that is a realm. And I think that's what you're getting at, that like you're not so much interested in that. And neither am I. Neither am I. I'm more about work that's like, this is the process. And I think that's what makes me sometimes sit and yearn for old projects that I've worked on, because it's like, I'm never going to get that again, because that was that process and that individual thing. Whereas I think when we're working, it's all about this product that we can like recreate and manufacture because we need to. And this big thing, like this job, this company is a machine, and it's producing something, and you're a replaceable part in all of this, and you don't really matter. So whatever you're going through, I need you to take that outside. Whereas like theater is like, wow, Fenice, you're going through some things, invite it into the space. Yeah. Like let it feed what you're doing. Yeah. Let it feed what you're doing. And you have this special way of approaching life as any individual that is welcomed into this space. Like, you're super emotional, girl, that's why we picked you for this character. Bring it in there, as opposed to being something that's like, you don't really matter, work on your work and do the work. It's like, yes, do the work, but invite whatever you're using and pulling from as a human, whether it's your childhood, what just happened to you out on the street.
And, Daria, piggybacking off of that, the process, I know for me, hair has its problems. Yes. Because the script is problematic. Yes. And there's not enough. Let's talk about how there's not enough screen time for the Black people. Hello. That's just one problem. Hello. One out of many, because it's just a little thing over there. Y'all messing with the indigenous folks. It's just problems everywhere. But something that I do like about that show as a mainstream musical, that has been on Broadway, whatnot, gone through all of that, is that it's a protest. It's on stage. It's a protest happening in front of you. And if that's what it felt like for me. I was in rehearsal, but I was very much protesting while I was on stage. I'm like, this is my protest. I can't do shit else. I'm on stage anyway. Well, look at that. Like, I'm protesting.
Right. Got an audience for it.
This is real. Like, I'm like, look, Air, we're really singing right now. Like, this is real for us. I mean, Trump had just gotten elected. So, of course, we're all fucking fuming. And just little things of, like, the way the cultures in the actual cast itself, just things like that. And yeah, like being on that stage and yelling and holding that sign and stomping and singing Ain't Got No, and thinking about all like my black brothers who had to die in that war and didn't get shit for it. Like, just things like that for me was my protest. And sometimes that's why I'm like, we need more pieces like that can be fun but a protest. Like, there's an active purpose for what we're doing. Like, every image you see has a purpose, whether you realize it or not. It's still gonna hit you at some point. It'll be sitting in the back of your mind, and it's gonna hit you at the dinner table, Janet, about how that image you saw on the stage relates to this thing you just saw on the news, and you're gonna be shook. Like,
I think there's also a freedom to it that you're getting to, that it's not just when you enter the space that you can pull from outside, but when you leave the space, you are allowed to bring it with you to the dinner table or on your mind when you're going to sleep, or allow it to affect your next day or what have you. Whereas I feel like being in these jobs I'm talking about, like working for like corporate America, like it was really like what is in the boardroom stays in the boardroom, and you gotta leave it there, and like don't complain about it, we're moving on to the next. Whereas I think like performing art allows this freedom where it's like it can literally move from one thing to the next, which I feel like is devising, like allowing it from like this simple task of brushing your teeth. So like, what does this do with my hand? Carry it out. How do I go through this space? This is a dance. Like, it's so free flowing. And I think the most creation and like organic creation comes from that when you free yourselves. And I think we're just going around not being able to free ourselves. And I just think that art allows a space where it's like, girl, you can be free. And whatever you want to use this space to do, this black box wherever we are, go and do it.
Amen. And that's perfectly said. With that said, we're going to jump on to our Q&A. We've got 2 questions. One question, I'll say. One statement and one question. All right, so from If It Ain't About Damani, the strange person, I have no idea who this is. Damani says, "Hi, my name is Damani, and I want to know if one day I'll be featured on your podcast. Thanks, huge fan."
Wonder who that is, Denise.
Absolutely not. You will not know. I'm just kidding. This is my best friend, guys. Of course you're going to be on the podcast someday. I just haven't seen you in so long, so come to New York.
All right.
Also, my baby's graduating. Shout out to Morehouse. All right, next question is anonymous, and we're going to get a little NSFW, y'all. So this person says, "My question is that during sex, or even by myself, I tend to come pretty quickly. I know it's not a bad thing per se, but I would like to keep up with my partner. Do you have any tips on how to last longer?" So first off, I am so honored that you feel comfortable enough to share this with me. Mm-hmm. Also, second, I cannot tell you what to do with your body. I really can't. That is the moral of the year. I can't tell you what to do with your body. But speaking on my own experience and just from biology, I really, have you experimented with yourself? Yes, it says you have. Okay, so check. Figure out what your triggers are. I know for myself, if you're a family member, cut it off now. Okay.
Same for me.
Cut it off, Uncle. Bye, Uncle B. Love you. But if you're, I know for me, like, there's certain things that if I have more clitoral stimulation, like obviously I'm going to come faster. That's just for me. Some people, it doesn't work that way. Some people aren't in sync in terms of clitoral and vaginal stimulation. It takes more time and practice to kind of sync up the two. So it really depends on you just playing around with what you need and what you like and what triggers your orgasms. Or, you know, trying different styles. I don't know. And something else is like, don't put so much pressure on yourself either. If coming fast is just something you do, then that's just something you do. And that's okay. I mean, if you're feeling self-conscious because of something a partner said, then that's them. Like, that's their business. It's your body and it does what it does, and they don't have to participate if they don't want to. But if this is something that you just want to work on for you, all I can say is experiment. Really?
Yeah.
Do you have anything to...
Yeah, I love that this question and this topic was posed during the art conversation and art for healing's sake, because I think one may listen and be like, those are two different things. Oh, they've switched topics completely. And for me, like, my lens through sex, it's not. It's like one and the same for me.
Thank you.
Because
Agreed.
it's this thing of like process that I feel like I've learned and discovered and been taught about sex, and that's how I approach it, is like something that helped me, like being transparent again. Any relatives listening, goodbye,
go away.
When I first approached sex, I was extremely nervous and self-conscious, and that was something that like I didn't feel like was a home base for me. Like, I think certain people like find different ways to navigate through the world, and they're like, okay, like public speaking is my thing. I got it. And some people are like, I am sexual. Got it. And it was something where like, I've definitely been sexual, but it wasn't something I gave myself permission to explore and to like fully live in that space. So approaching that was like really nerve-wracking for me, and I put pressure on it because I think the way that we frame discussions of sex is, I saw some like TED talk about this. I'm not taking credit for it, y'all, but it's this way of like someone wins, someone loses. We're talking about a game, home run, like the whole framing
it's really gross.
Of sex is
Shout
like
out misogyny.
Like someone is a victor, someone should be shamed, someone gave someone, you took my virginity.
Yeah.
It's really unhealthy and really problematic. But for me, like, just approaching it the way I approach art of like, and specifically devising, was like, we are two people and who have two bodies in this space and time, and we're going to create something. Yeah. And it's not about being wrong. Mm-hmm. It's about discovery. And whatever we choose to create with our bodies, with our minds in this space is right. Yeah. So we don't have to worry about being wrong. Let's throw that out of the space. That's not what we're doing here. And it's just about us having a good time and enjoying each other and discovering ourselves and one another. And for me, I found when I approach it that way, that's when I have, and I'm cautioning myself when I'm saying this, when I'm using this language, I'm almost hesitant to use it, of like, that's when I have my excuse me, y'all, biggest like victories or successes in the bedroom, when I'm like, that was a really good time. When I just like approach it like being like, wow, like, I'm so honored to be in this space with you, that you feel like you can be vulnerable enough with me in this space. And I'm so grateful that like I can feel vulnerable in this space where I literally have nothing to hide. Yeah. And we're just going to discover this together and go on a journey. Like, let's just take a journey. And to me, like, when you approach that with a lot of different things, like making a podcast, having a conversation where there's not this weight on it of like, this has to be fantastic. Yeah. Like, I have to impress this person or whatever. And I think when you get into a space where you feel like this huge pressure that, like you said, it's the partner in the bedroom that's putting that pressure on you or making you feel like you're not good enough, that's not a healthy situation, in my opinion, where it feels like you have to impress. I've been in intimate settings where I feel like, okay, like, this person's been with some other people, and now I'm up next. I'm number 5. Okay, number 5 for the win, Like, it's just about the journey and discovery. And I think that's when you're going to find the most success, or whatever that means, when you're going to have the greatest time. And I think part of the process is first seeing what you're working with. Like, you see the correlation with devising. It's like seeing, okay, this is what I'm working with. This is what makes me feel good by myself. Now I'm entering a space with someone else, and now I can almost give you directions, give you tips, and teach you about how I work. You can do the same, and then we can see how we work together.
And let's destigmatize the idea of having conversations before and after sex. Because how else are you going to learn? Like, that's why 80% of fucking men don't know where the clitoris is. Because they don't fucking ask. All right? That's an exaggeration, y'all. Also very heteronormative.
Very true. Thank you. And also, I'm a huge fan of check-ins.
Yeah.
During, like, not even just like check in, check out, clock in, clock out, but like also being like, okay, how are you feeling right now? And building that rapport in that safe space where it's okay to like check in with someone and being like, did you like that? Did we like that? No, we didn't. Okay, we can.
That's me usually when we're done, but
sex is a conversation.
It is. And like, thankfully I have a partner that I don't have to talk much because our conversations are very much like spiritual ones. But
a word.
Something I said that Daria wanted me to reiterate was a lot of us don't know our own bodies until somebody else is touching them.
Ooh.
And that's not cool. Like, that for some reason, that's just the culture here. Like, all of the shaming involved in sex and exploring your sexuality, that's what you get. You get people that don't know how to work their own fucking bodies, and it sucks. So, yeah, in a nutshell, you got to figure it out for yourself. And I wish you the best of luck, girl. Have it up.
Have a good time. Have a good old time. Knock yourself
lie. Out. All right, y'all. So we're wrapping up, but I just want to let you all know that we're doing listener Q&A now. So if you want to send in questions, you're welcome to. You can head to www.facebook.com/thechrysalis podcast, or you can head to my Instagram at Fenice, Fenice, Alex, Alex, and you can send me a DM to have your question on the air. I will shout you out. Help me help you. So yeah, share, like, all of that stuff. And we want to hear your questions. We want to be able to interact with you all. So don't be shy. All right. We'll see you next week. Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys, for listening.
All right, y'all. Thank you for listening to episode 3. We will see you next Sunday.